Why her and why now?
Um, I'm not sure I pick my subjects.
Hmm.
I'm not sure that they pick me either. I think there is an element of happenstance. There are certain stories that I'm attracted to, and many, many stories that I've been attracted to over the years, I have not been able to pursue for one reason or another. They haven't ended up as films. Um, God knows I've been attracted to many, many, many tabloid stories over the years. But I was looking around. At one point I was thinking, well, maybe I'll do a series of tabloid stories like First Person. Something that still, by the way, interests me.
Hmm.
The problem is that when I get interested in a story, I dig in, particularly because I direct a lot of commercials now, so I have some money of my own. I'm not as desperate as I used to be, and if something does interest me, I can pursue it.
Hmm.
I can see it through to the bitter end. I read an article in the Boston Globe, which was about the dog cloning. And I would never have made a movie about dog cloning. It's interesting, but it's not something that I would make a movie about. But at the end of the article, they mentioned the possible connection to a 30-year-old sex and chain story. And that did get my attention. It's that combination of two really disparate elements, which kind of irresistible. So I called Joyce. Tell me if I'm going into too much detail here.
No, this is fine.
I called Joyce, and she was not particularly interested in talking. But I called her at a time when I knew she was being hounded by the media. And my usual rule of thumb is just wait. Wait until no one is interested anymore. And then, possibly, she might want to do an interview. And that proved to be true.
Hmm. So at that point, though, you didn't really know that if it was going to pan out and turn into a movie or not?
I never know.
Hmm.
I often think that there are radically different kinds of documentaries. The documentaries which are more like feature films in the sense that you know what the story is. You know the first act, the second act, the third act, the epilogue, whatever. And it's an issue of just getting the real people to tell the story and illustrating it, etc., etc., etc. You know where you're going in the story. In this kind of a story, no. It reminded me of The Thin Blue Line in the sense that I was digging a hole for myself in many ways. It's interview after interview taking you deeper and deeper and deeper into a story where you don't know clearly what the story is. You're uncovering a story as the film is being made.
Hmm.
With the frightening thought, in the case of The Thin Blue Line, that there might be no movie, because if I didn't get that final interview, he was the last interview, David Harris. I waited 2 years to get that interview. If I hadn't gotten that interview, it's not clear to me whether I would have had a movie. It would have been a much, much, much weaker movie without him. And no, I had no guarantee. I would say the chances of my not getting that interview were enormous. So this is like that. It's one interview leading you deeper and deeper and deeper into a story.
Looking at the end credits, there was a list of other people who you said declined to be interviewed, or that they had died. I get
Which
the
is
feeling,
always an effective way of declining to be interviewed.
I get the feeling that if you had gotten to them, if you had gotten to the Mormon boyfriend, it could have been a dramatically different movie. I mean, it could have, rather than being her voice and the reporters and all. I mean, to if you had his voice in there too, it could have really changed what.
Well, it inevitably would have changed it radically.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure, however, it would have answered any of the deeper questions about the story. But I'll never know, because he wouldn't talk. I mean, if he'd have talked, I would have interviewed him, of course. But it was just not possible.
As you were discovering the story through talking to her, were you also discovering how you wanted to tell the story?
We had had 4 interviews, and we edited the material. It was a little over an hour. And I felt that there really wasn't a film there. It wasn't really there yet. And so we did another 2 interviews, which was the fixed-wing pilot Jackson Shaw and the British photojournalist Kent Gavin, who came over from Britain. And in fact, we brought 2 people from Britain, Peter Torrey initially, and then Kent Gavin. I felt that the Los Angeles part of the story hadn't been told, really, and I was curious. And so Kent Gavin filled in that part of the story, at least in part. And Jackson Shaw, I had no expectations at all. I thought, this is an interview I probably am not even going to use. I don't know whether he's going to be any good. He was fabulous, one of my very favorite interviews. He's really, really funny and interesting. And he became another man trapped in Joyce's web.
Right. The style you use here, I mean, it's a very playful style with the headlines splashed and suddenly they'll say something and there'll be the word up on the screen. I mean, how did that come about? Why did you opt for it?
Well, it seemed tabloid-like. It seemed dramatic. It seemed a way of emphasizing certain kinds of themes. It seemed funny. It seemed like a device, an interesting use of graphic design and typography. If I were to be scrupulously honest, I would just say I liked it. It seemed to work with the story, and I liked it.
Right. Yeah, I think that if you were to approach this particular story in dead earnest, there would it wouldn't feel right.
I don't think so. I think it would be I think it needs some kind of absurdist tone to it, because it is an absurd story.